Hi, welcome to my presentation. Today's presentation will be on budgeting and human resources and be given by myself, Ashley Ramos. So in this week's lectures, Mike Bailey, the finance director for the city of Redmond, explains that what a budget actually is, particularly in organizations covering certain cities. So a budget is an economic plan that issues its financial and human resources on the accomplishments of a specific goal and objective. For the city of Menifee, the 2018-2019 annual budget reflects their priorities and their continuation of budgets that they outlined as a priority for the current budget plan. And going over this budget, I'll cover some of the basics, which will be the makeup of the budget for the city, the primary sources of revenue and expenditures, and I'll go over identify some of the important characteristics and changes in the budget. The budget was adopted a year in advance, which was of June 2018. Like the book states, the difference between government funding is that funding is not meant to necessarily make a profit at the end of the year, but to make the most out of the resources that were given, which also explains why a budget is due and adopted for them a year out. Some of the budget objectives include public safety, land use, city hall, infrastructure, community outreach, and workforce and facility management. So the total budget that the city indicates that they'll have for the FY18 and FY19 is $80,000, $571,227. This amount is about $6 million more than last year. This is due for several reasons. Primarily, the budget has a 95 total individual groups, but they categorize them into 4 primary categories that they use in covering some of the primary uses of funding. So starting with the general funds, the general funds is the main account that the city uses that covers their priorities. It covers a large amount of their budget at 72% and is used for public safety, community development, recreation, and public works and engineering. In this particular group, public safety is a high priority for the city and covers which the city uses a large portion of the general funds. Public safety, 55.3% of the general funds account is committed to public safety, and which includes police services, fire safeties, and other related services. The other accounts include special revenue funds, which is primarily revenue, grant funding, and taxes, special district funds, and development impact funds. These 2 funds are dedicated to construction concerning bridges, roads, landscaping, and other infrastructure. So for the fiscal year 2018-19, we have the expenditure summary by fund. Some of the expenditures are underlined by line items, and they point out basically in the master plan for the expenditure report what falls under the general account. And then if you see over to the right, the general account basically makes up what you see here, and as we see, a large majority, 23% goes to public safety, which covers police, fire, and other safety related expenditures. One thing that's new this year for the city is the Measure DD taxes. The Measure DD taxes allow the city to increase sales tax to 1%. So the city will expect to see an increase in revenue from these measures, or from this new piece of legislation. And with that, we have the revenue summary. Some important items to point out for the revenue summary is that property taxes is the main source of revenue for the city. We also see in the chapter that a government's primary source of revenue does come from taxes. And newly implemented Measure DD is expected to bring in at least $7 million this year, and other fund revenues we'll see that contribute a large portion of the city's budget is to construction as well as public safety. So next we'll cover aspects of human resources and staffing. In going over the Menifee's 2019 budget, there were the hiring process and in viewing job postings. Their hiring process do reflect historical merit policies such as the Pendleton Act and the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978. And to cover some of their objectives, they indicate that they do have priority objectives, which include an online tracking system they're hoping to improve this year. The online tracking system will basically update the old hiring tracking system that the city uses to track applications. They also want to implement a EPN, which is a employee pool notice program, which will basically eliminate the mail that the city uses to communicate with the Department of Motor Vehicles. They also want to implement a wellness program. There will be an increased communication with health insurance companies and other benefit vendors to help develop a more community-based wellness program that's available to the community. There's also labor negotiations and a new hire orientation. Updates to the new hire orientation will improve board presentations and just extend the actual length of the classes. So in doing so, the city has taken a step to obtain some of these objectives by hiring a total of 106 new employees this year, both full-time and part-time positions. So one of the first jobs available that we see is through the city's main webpage. As the job that I focused on was the associate engineer. The reason I focused on this particular position was because it indicates that the city is focusing on opening jobs that actually contribute to the completion of some of the development projects that they have going on. So the job title is an associate engineer. The department is for their engineering department. And here we can see their salary. Next we have the minimum requirements and the job duties. Some of the specific job duties include important aspects that reflect on the chapter, which is the first one, the civil engineering principles, techniques, policies, and procedures. I think with organizations it's important that individuals meet, that the organization focuses hiring processes on recruiting quality employees who are experienced. Part of this includes principal techniques, policy, and knowing policies and procedures. And then we'll see we'll have the job duties that reflect those minimum requirements. Some of the other places that I found job announcement for were on Indeed, Glassdoor, and I'm sorry, that should say snagajob.com. Not all the jobs located around were for positions for working for the city, but a lot of the jobs that we see here for local stores and small businesses is due to the fact that I think that Menifee is still a developing city. So a lot of the new developments that have been recently built are these small businesses that they're also recruiting for. So one of the interesting facts I found while going through the city's budget and human resources information was that a large portion of the budget did focus on infrastructure improvements. Public safety is obvious. Well, it made sense to me that the city would spend a significant amount on their budget for public safety. But given the fact that there were so many projects going on, like we see here in Scott Road, Menifee Valley, Town Center, Hidden Hills, and the Auto Murphy Ranch, these driving through the city, these projects are visible and have been going on for some time. But it's given that there's so many, I think that the overall budget that was designated to them is still pretty low. Just calculating it for each, it approximated about $2 million, which I thought was still pretty low. So in conclusion, I talked about some of the basics, which was the budget makeup, some of the aspects of the 2019 budget, such as the general fund expenditures and revenue reports, and just covered some of the job posting information and staffing for the city of Menifee. Thank you.